AITA for giving my wife all the space she wanted until she begged for my attention? My wife told me I was clingy when all I wanted was to connect with her. That single conversation changed everything between us, and looking back, it was the moment I realized just how distorted our relationship had become. It all started on an ordinary Wednesday. I had gone to pick up her favorite Thai food from that one restaurant downtown she was always raving about. Despite the ridiculous line, I had waited there for 20 minutes just to surprise her. When I walked into the house with the familiar aroma filling the living room, I expected at least a smile. But instead, she barely looked up from her phone. "You did not have to do that," she said, scrolling as if it were more important than acknowledging the effort I had just made. I set the food down on the kitchen counter, trying to hide my disappointment. I thought it would make her happy. We had not had a real dinner together in weeks. She finally put her phone down, but the look she gave me was not gratitude. It was annoyance. "There you go again." "Doing what again?" "Being clingy. I had a stressful day at work, and you are trying to turn this dinner into some grand romantic gesture." I stared at her, genuinely confused. Since when was bringing home her favorite food considered needy? I am not trying to make this a romantic moment. I am just trying to have a conversation with my wife. In the following days, I noticed the pattern everywhere. When I asked her how her day was, I got one-word answers. Then she would quickly change the subject. When I suggested we watch a movie together on Saturday night, she said she would rather just scroll through Netflix alone. When I tried to hold her hand at breakfast, she pulled it away, saying she was not a morning person. The breaking point came the next weekend. I had planned what I thought was a simple afternoon, a walk around the neighborhood, and maybe a stop at that new coffee shop she herself had said she wanted to try. Nothing extravagant, just the two of us, no distractions. "Do we really have to do this right now?" she asked when I suggested it. "Do what?" "Spend time together. You are acting like I am personally rejecting you. I just need some room to breathe." That word hung in the air between us. Space. As if I were suffocating her simply by wanting to be in her presence. Space from what exactly? I asked, keeping my voice calm even as my patience wore thin. "This," she said, gesturing vaguely between us. "This need you have to constantly connect and make everything meaningful. Sometimes I just want to exist without having to manage someone else's emotional needs." I felt something shift inside me in that moment. It was not hurt or anger. It was just a cold understanding of where I truly stood in her priorities. "So, you think wanting to spend time with my wife is having emotional needs? See, there you go again. You are making me out to be the bad guy because I do not want to be attached at the hip every weekend." I took a step back, both literally and figuratively. "So what exactly are you asking for?" "I am asking you to stop being so needy. Give me space. Let me breathe without feeling like I have to be performing for you all the time." The irony was not lost on me. She was calling normal couple interactions a performance. But fine, if space was what she wanted, space was what she would get. "Okay," I said simply. She blinked, clearly expecting a longer fight. "Okay, you want space? I get it. Consider it done." From that moment on, I applied her request to the letter. No more surprise dinners. No more questions about her day beyond simple politeness. No more suggestions for joint activities. No more reaching for her hand. No more attempts to create those meaningful moments she found so burdensome. If she wanted to breathe without my emotional needs, then that is exactly what I would give her. The change was immediate and, to be honest, liberating. Instead of planning around her schedule and preferences, I started planning around my own. Instead of pouring energy into a relationship where it was seen as neediness, I redirected that energy toward things that actually felt rewarding. At first, she seemed pleased with the new arrangement. She could scroll through her phone during dinner without feeling guilty for ignoring me. She could make her own weekend plans without checking if I wanted to join. She had all the space she had asked for. And I gained something I had not even realized I was missing: peace. But peace, as I would soon discover, tastes very different when you are the one who asked for it versus when you are the one being kept at a distance. The new dynamic between us settled in faster than I would have thought. Within a week, I had completely rewired the way I approached our relationship, and the results were telling. My mornings became incredibly efficient. Instead of lingering over coffee trying to start conversations she clearly did not want, I would just grab my mug, glance at my phone, and head out. No more, "Did you sleep well?" or how is your day looking? Just a simple see you tonight. If she was even awake when I left. She seemed to appreciate the new routine. No more sighs when I tried to engage. No more eye rolls when I asked questions. Just peaceful silence and the freedom she had explicitly requested. I started going to the gym before work instead of trying to coordinate our morning schedules. That 45 minutes on the treadmill became my time to think, and honestly, I had not realized how much mental energy I spent reading her moods and adjusting my behavior accordingly. Evenings changed, too. Before, I would ask about her day and genuinely listen. Now, I offered her the same courtesy she had shown me for months. A polite acknowledgement followed by a change of subject. When she mentioned stress at work, I would just nod and say, "That sounds tough," before going back to whatever I was doing. Dinner conversations became surprisingly simple. Instead of trying to create meaningful dialogue, we discussed practical things: bills to pay, weekend chores, household logistics. Nothing that required an emotional investment from either of us. The weekend routine was the biggest transformation. Saturday mornings used to be for planning things together, deciding between the farmer's market or a hike, figuring out which friends to see or what restaurant to try. Now, I would simply announce my plans. I am going to wash the car, then meet some co-workers to watch the game. She never asked to come, and I never invited her. After all, this was the space she had demanded. I rediscovered hobbies I had let slide. That dusty guitar in the closet became my evening companion instead of wasting time trying to talk to someone who found my attention suffocating. I signed up for that photography class I had been putting off for months, always thinking she might want to do something with me instead. The most interesting change was my reaction to her attempts at light conversation. When she would make random comments about something she saw online or recount some workplace drama, I would respond with the same energy level she had given me for months. Minimal engagement, a superficial response, and a quick return to my own activities. "Did you see that crazy story about the downtown restaurant?" she would ask. "No, what happened?" I would reply without looking up from what I was doing. She would recount it, and I would offer a brief, weird, or huh, before getting back to my task. No follow-up questions, no extending the conversation, just the acknowledgement she herself had taught me was sufficient. After 2 weeks of this new arrangement, I noticed she started lingering in the kitchen while I was making breakfast. She would lean against the counter with her mug, clearly looking for a conversation, but I had already established the boundaries she had requested. I would give her a cordial good morning and continue with my routine. Sometimes I would catch her watching me while I was reading or working on my laptop, not with a loving gaze, but as if she were trying to figure something out. When our eyes met, she would quickly look away and find something else to do. The space she had asked for was working exactly as intended. She had complete freedom to exist without engaging with my emotional needs. She could be as independent as she wanted, with no pressure to connect or perform. And I found myself genuinely enjoying this new version of our relationship. No more walking on eggshells, wondering if my natural desire to be close to my wife would be perceived as overbearing. No more uncertainty about whether a simple gesture would be appreciated or dismissed. The peace was palpable. I went to bed each night without wondering if I had somehow failed to meet her emotional expectations that day. I woke up each morning without needing to strategize how to navigate her moods or create positive interactions. But by the 3rd week, I started noticing small shifts in her behavior that suggested all this space might not be bringing her the satisfaction she had hoped for. In the 3rd week, the subtle signs became impossible to ignore. The same woman who had demanded space was now doing everything she could to occupy mine. It started with small things. Suddenly, she was interested in whatever I was doing. If I was reading, she would sit nearby and ask questions about the book. If I was working on my laptop, she would comment on how focused I looked. They were not real conversations. They felt more like probes. "You have been different lately," she said one Thursday evening as I was reviewing some work documents at the kitchen table. I glanced up briefly. "Different how?" "I do not know. Quieter, more distant, I guess." I nodded and went back to my papers. "You asked for space. I am giving it to you." She stood there for a few more seconds, clearly waiting for a longer explanation. But I had already learned her communication style. Brief response, minimal emotional investment, quick return to individual activities. The weekend brought more obvious attempts to connect. On Saturday morning, as I was heading out to the hardware store, she suddenly announced that she might come with me. I thought you were going to organize the closet today, I reminded her, referencing a project she herself had mentioned. I could do that later. Maybe I will just tag along. It is pretty boring. I am just getting some screws and looking at tools. Nothing special. She shrugged like it was no big deal, but I could see the disappointment when I did not enthusiastically invite her. The old me would have been thrilled that she wanted to spend time with me. The new me recognized it for what it was, a test to see if the boundaries she had set were still holding. And they were. Suit yourself, I replied, grabbing my keys. I will be back in an hour. When I returned, she was sitting in the living room, laptop closed, clearly waiting for a detailed account of my mundane trip to Home Depot. Instead, I put away my purchases and started fixing the cabinet hinge I had bought the screws for. So, how was your trip? She asked from the doorway. Fine. Got what I needed. What are you fixing? The kitchen cabinet. This hinge has been loose for weeks. She watched me work for a few minutes. The old me would have explained the process, maybe even asked her to help, turning it into a bonding experience. The new me just did the job efficiently. I was thinking we could do something tonight, she said casually. Maybe watch a movie or try that new Italian place. I paused and looked at her. I already made plans to meet the guys to watch the game. Oh, she said, trying to hide her surprise. Since when do you have set plans on a Saturday night? Since I started accepting invitations instead of checking with you first. The flicker of hurt on her face was brief, but unmistakable. 3 weeks ago, that look would have had me canceling my plans and suggesting the Italian restaurant. Now, it just reminded me of how many invitations I had turned down over the past few months to prioritize her comfort over my own social life. You could have asked if I wanted to come, she said. To watch football with a bunch of guys talking about work and sports? You dislike that. Maybe I would have been in the mood. Since when? She had no answer, because we both knew the truth. She had never shown any interest in my friends or the things I enjoyed doing with them. At best, she tolerated them, often making passive comments about the time I was wasting with people who were not her. Sunday brought the most direct attempt yet. She suggested we go for that walk I had proposed weeks ago, the very one that had triggered her demand for space. It is a beautiful day for a walk, she said, looking out the window. Yeah, perfect weather. I agreed, continuing to read my book. Want to explore the neighborhood? Maybe try that new coffee shop? She offered. I looked up from the page. I thought you were not interested in doing things just because I suggested them. That is not what I said. You said you wanted space to breathe without having to manage someone else's emotional needs. Going for walks and trying new coffee shops together sounds exactly like the kind of thing you wanted space from. She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing she had clearly contradicted herself. I just thought it might be nice, she said weakly. It would have been nice 3 weeks ago when I suggested it, but you made it clear that is not the dynamic you wanted. I went back to my book, and she stood there for another minute before finally walking away. I could hear her in the kitchen, opening cabinets and rearranging things that did not need rearranging. That evening, as I was getting ready to go out, she tried one more time. Are you sure you want to go out tonight? We could just order in and stay home. We already stay home every night. You on your phone, me reading or working on something. That is the kind of together time you prefer. Remember? That is not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She could not answer because she was starting to realize that getting exactly what you ask for is not always what you truly want. The irony was becoming clear to both of us. The space she had demanded was working perfectly, but perfect space starts to look a lot like loneliness when you are the one sitting in it. The blow-up happened exactly 1 month after her initial request for space. I was in the garage organizing my tools when she stormed in, her face flushed with a frustration that had been building for days. We need to talk, she announced, arms crossed, blocking my path to the workbench. I put down the wrench and gave her my full attention. All right, what is on your mind? What is on my mind? Seriously, are you going to pretend you do not know what I am talking about? Honestly, no. You asked for space. I gave it to you. Everything has been exactly as you wanted. Her eyes flashed with anger. No, this is not what I wanted. You have just checked out of our relationship. How so? I asked, leaning against the workbench, genuinely curious to see where she would take this. How so? You barely talk to me. You make plans without including me. You are acting like I am just a roommate, not your wife. I am confused. A month ago, you told me you needed space because I was too clingy and needy. You told me you wanted to breathe without having to manage my emotional needs. This is exactly what I have given you. That is not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because you were very specific. You said you were tired of me constantly trying to connect and turning everything into something meaningful. She started pacing, frustrated that her own words were being used against her. I meant I needed a little break, not for you to become a completely different person. Different? How? I am the same person. I just stopped doing the things you said were suffocating you. You stopped caring. The accusation hung in the air between us. I watched her face, seeing the genuine anguish, but also recognizing the manipulation that had become so familiar over the months. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. When I cared too much, I was clingy and suffocating. When I care exactly as much as you asked, I do not care enough. So what, exactly, is the correct amount of caring that will not result in a complaint? Do not you turn this around on me with your logic games. I am not turning anything around. I am asking a real question. You set the boundaries. I respected them. And now you are upset about the consequences of those boundaries. She stopped pacing and stared at me. I never asked you to become cold and distant. I am not cold or distant. I am respectful and considerate. I am giving you the space you wanted without placing demands on your time or emotional energy. Was not that the point? I wanted you to stop being so intense about everything, not to stop being interested in me at all. I could not help but smile at the irony. So you wanted me to be interested, but not too interested. Connected, but not too connected. To care, but not too much. Do you see how impossible that is to navigate? Other husbands manage to find a balance. Other husbands have wives who clearly state what they actually want instead of complaining about what they do not want, and then acting surprised when their husband listens to them. Her face tightened. I should not have to spell out every single detail of how to be in a relationship. You are right. You should not. In a healthy relationship, showing interest in your partner and wanting to spend time with them would not be seen as a character flaw that needs to be managed. This is not fair. What is not fair? The fact that I took your complaint seriously and adjusted my behavior accordingly, or the fact that getting exactly what you asked for did not make you as happy as you thought it would. She was silent for a moment, and I could see her trying to formulate an argument that would make this my fault instead of the natural consequence of her own demands. I miss how we used to be, she finally said. How we used to be was me trying to connect with you and you complaining that I was too clingy. Which part of that do you miss exactly? I miss when my husband actually wanted to be near me. I didn't want to be near you. You made it very clear that desire was unwelcome. So now you do not want to be with me? Now I want to be with people who appreciate my company instead of treating it like a burden they have to endure. The truth of that statement hit both of us at the same time. She looked shocked that I had said it out loud, and I realized just how much clarity the past month had given me about what I had been accepting as normal. Is that really how you see our relationship? She asked in a low voice. That is how our relationship has been. You complained about my attention when I gave it, and now you are complaining about the lack of it since I stopped. The common denominator in both scenarios is your constant dissatisfaction, regardless of the dynamic. So what are you saying? I am saying that maybe the problem is not the amount of space or connection we have. Maybe the problem is that one of us is never happy with what the other is offering. She stared at me, clearly not expecting the conversation to go in this direction. I thought you preferred independence, I added with a slight smile. Is not that what space is? The freedom to exist without having to consider someone else's needs or expectations. Her silence told me everything. She had gotten exactly what she had asked for and was now discovering the difference between independence and loneliness. The week after our garage discussion brought a completely different version of my wife. The woman who would roll her eyes at my attempts to connect was gone. In her place was someone desperate to undo the boundaries she herself had insisted on. It started on Monday morning with an elaborate breakfast she had made before I even got up. Pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee, the whole spread. She was standing in the kitchen with an anxious smile when I walked in. Morning, I said, taking in the coffee she had brewed. Looks great. Special occasion. No special occasion. I just thought it would be a nice way to start the week. I nodded my appreciation and fixed myself a plate. The old me would have been moved by the gesture, reading deep meaning into every pancake. The new me simply enjoyed a good breakfast without assigning any emotional weight to it. "What does your day look like?" she asked, sitting across from me, clearly intent on starting a conversation. "Pretty standard. Few meetings, a project deadline to review. Yours?" "Same old, but maybe we could do lunch today? That sandwich place near your office." I looked up from my plate. "I have a working lunch with the team today. Some other time." The disappointment was immediate, though she tried to hide it. "Right, of course. Well, maybe dinner, then. I could make something special." "Sounds great," I said, finishing my coffee. "Thanks for this. It was excellent." I gave her a peck on the forehead, as I always did, and headed out, leaving her sitting at the table with all this hopeful energy and nowhere to put it. The pattern repeated itself throughout the week. She would suggest activities. I would agree if I had nothing else planned, or I would politely decline without the enthusiasm she was clearly hoping for. She would try to start deeper conversations. I would engage briefly before returning to what I was doing. On Wednesday, she became more direct. "I have been thinking about what you said in the garage," she said while I was reading in the living room. "Which part?" "About the balance of connection and space." I do not think I was clear about what I needed. I closed my book and gave her my attention. "All right, what did you need?" "I needed you to give me space so that I could miss you. When you were always there, always attentive, always planning things for us, I felt like I never got a chance to actually want your attention because it was just a constant." That is an interesting way of looking at it. But I also did not want you to become completely unavailable. I just wanted a more natural rhythm instead of constant intensity. "So you wanted me to be less available so that you would appreciate it more when I was?" "Yes, something like that." I nodded, thinking it over. The problem with that logic is that it assumes I should manage your emotions by suppressing my natural inclination to show interest in my wife. It puts me in the position of having to calculate the exact amount of attention that will make you appreciate it without feeling overwhelmed. I do not think it has to be that complicated. It does not have to be complicated at all. People who want to be in a relationship show interest in each other. People who see that interest as a burden probably should not be in one. She was quiet for a moment. "Are you saying you do not want to be in a relationship with me anymore?" "I am saying I do not want to be in a relationship where my natural behavior with someone I love is treated as a problem to be managed." What if I have learned from this? What if I know how to respond differently now? Respond differently to what? To me wanting to spend time with you, asking about your day, planning things I think you will enjoy? Those are not things to be managed. They are normal relationship behaviors. I know that now. Do you? Because a month ago, you also knew that they were suffocating you. What has changed, other than you experiencing the consequences of getting exactly what you asked for? She moved closer on the couch, reaching for my hand. I did not pull away, but I did not respond either. "What has changed," she said, "is that I realized I was taking your attention for granted. I thought it would always be there for me whenever I wanted it. So I pushed it away when it felt like too much. And now I miss it. I miss you trying to connect with me. I miss you making me feel like I matter to you. You do matter to me, but I also matter to me. And spending my emotional energy on someone who sees that energy as a burden is not sustainable. It would not be a burden anymore." I studied her face, seeing the genuine anguish, but also recognizing the same pattern that had led us here. She wanted what she could not have and rejected what was freely offered. "How can I be sure of that?" I asked. "How do I know that in 2 weeks, you will not feel suffocated again and ask for more space?" Because now I understand what space really means. Space is just loneliness when you have gotten used to someone else filling the silences for you. She nodded, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "I made a mistake. You made a choice. The mistake was thinking I would keep offering something you had already rejected. So what happens now?" I leaned back in my chair, considering the question. "Now, you know what it feels like to want a connection from someone who has learned to find peace without constantly having to offer it. An interesting role reversal, do you not think? Are you punishing me? I am protecting myself. There is a difference." The tears fell then, and the old me would have rushed to comfort her. He would have seen her pain as more important than the months of rejection that led to this moment. The new me simply handed her a tissue and waited for her to compose herself. "I love you," she said, her voice desperate. "I love you too. But love is not enough when the fundamental dynamic is one person chasing and the other running away until they switch roles." She looked at me with something like panic, finally understanding that winning me back was not going to be as simple as just asking. The final conversation happened on a Saturday morning, 6 weeks after her initial demand for space. In that time, she had tried harder and harder to recreate the connection she had pushed away. But her efforts only highlighted how much I had changed by learning to value my own peace. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she approached with a determined look I had come to recognize as someone with a prepared speech. "We need to fix this. I want to talk about us," she said, sitting firmly at the kitchen table. I poured 2 cups and sat across from her. "I am listening. I have been thinking about everything that has happened, and I realized that I created this. I pushed you away when you were just trying to love me in the best way you knew how. That is true. And now I want what we had back." I took a sip of my coffee, studying her face. "What we had was you being uncomfortable with my attention and me trying to guess the right amount of interest that would not irritate you. It was not sustainable for either of us. But we were happy sometimes. We were, when you decided my attention was welcome. But happiness that depends on someone else's mood is not real happiness. It is just hope mixed with anxiety." She reached across the table and took my hand. "What if we build something better? Something where we both feel valued. And what would that look like?" "I do not know exactly, but I know I do not want to lose what we have." I leaned back in my chair. "But what is it that we have exactly? Because the last 6 weeks have shown me that what I thought we had was mostly me struggling to maintain a connection with someone who found the effort annoying. That is not true. It is. When I planned things for us, you said I was controlling. When I asked about your feelings, you said I was needy. When I wanted to spend time together, you said I was clingy. The only time you have appreciated those things is after I stopped doing them. People can change. Yes, they can. But a change that only happens after you have tasted the consequences is not really change. It is regret. And regret rarely lasts once the discomfort goes away." She was quiet for a long time, processing that. "So you are giving up on us?" "I am accepting what you taught me about us. You taught me that my natural way of loving you was a problem. You taught me that wanting a connection with my wife was being needy. You taught me that your comfort was more important than our relationship. I was wrong. Maybe. But being wrong does not erase the months you made me feel like there was something defective about simply wanting to be close to the person I married. So what happens now?" I finished my coffee and looked her straight in the eye. "Now, we both know who we really are. You are someone who desires things most when they are no longer available. And I am someone who has learned to find peace without constantly needing to earn someone else's affection. That sounds like you have already made up your mind." "I have, but not in the way you think." She frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have decided to stop participating in a dynamic where one person chases and the other flees. If we are going to be together, it is going to be as 2 people who actually want to be here, not one trying to convince the other that the relationship is worth their attention. I want to be here. You want to be here now because you have experienced what it is like when I am not chasing you. But wanting something because it is no longer available is not the same as wanting it because you truly value it. How can I prove to you that I value it? You cannot prove it. You can only live it. But proving and living are 2 different things." She stood up and started pacing, frustrated that the conversation was not going as she had planned. "So what are you saying? That it is too late? That there is nothing left to fix?" I stood up too, walking over to the window that looked out on the backyard. "I am saying the thing that needed fixing was the idea that love is something you earn with the right amount of attention and distance. Real love does not require that kind of calculation." I turned to face her. Real love is wanting to know about someone's day without it being called needy. It is planning things together without it being labeled controlling. It is showing interest without fearing that interest will be unwelcome. I can do that now. Can you? Because doing it means accepting attention gracefully, even when you are not in the mood. It means appreciating the effort, even when it is not perfectly timed. It means recognizing that someone trying to connect with you is a gift, not a burden. She nodded quickly. I understand now. Understanding and living are 2 different things. Understanding is intellectual. Living is a daily choice. I walked over to the kitchen counter and looked at her one last time. Here is what I have learned about myself these past 6 weeks. I do not need someone to complete me or make me happy. I can create my own peace, follow my own interests, and maintain my own friendships. I like the person I am when I am not constantly adjusting my behavior to manage your comfort level. That sounds lonely. It is not loneliness, it is freedom. And that freedom has shown me what I really want in a partner. Someone who adds to my life instead of demanding I shrink myself. Someone whose presence brings joy, not anxiety about whether I am being the right version of myself today. She was crying now, but they were not the manipulative tears I had learned to recognize. They were tears of genuine understanding. I ruined everything, did not I? You taught us both something important. You taught me that I do not have to accept my love being treated as a burden. And you learned what it feels like when that love is directed elsewhere. So this is it. It is over. I looked at the woman I had spent years trying to please, to love in a way that would not overwhelm her, to be just enough without ever being too much. This version of our relationship is over, the one where one person holds all the power and the other fights for it. Whether we are over depends on whether you can love someone without needing to control how much they are allowed to love you back. She wiped her eyes and looked at me with something I had never seen before, respect mixed with loss. I do not know if I can be that person. Then you already have your answer. The house was silent except for the muffled sound of her sobs. But this time, they were not my responsibility to fix. They were the natural consequences of her choices and the lessons she had to learn. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I am going to spend the day with people who appreciate my company. When I get back tonight, we can talk about what comes next. As I walked toward the door, I felt something I had not felt in months. Complete clarity about my own self-worth and a total peace with whatever came next. Her space had turned into loneliness, just as I had expected. But my independence had turned into something far more valuable, a self-respect that would never again depend on her approval. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.